Why should we analyze source text? That will be the first step in our review of Cristiano Nord's translation-oriented source text analysis model that we will be using throughout the course. She answered this question in 2005 in the second edition of her adaptation published by Rodopi of her famous dissertation. And I quote, "Most writers on translation theory agree that before embarking upon any translation, the translator should analyze the text comprehensively, since this appears to be the only way of ensuring that the source text has been wholly and correctly understood. So it stands to reason that we should read carefully if we are going to translate. This text that we are going to translate, the original or source text as we call it, needs to be correctly and deeply understood. Therefore, translators need to read and analyze the text. But does any model work for us?" She continues, "Various proposals have been put forward as to how such an analysis should be carried out and how particular translation problems might be best dealt with. This tends, however, to be based on models of text analysis which have been developed in other fields of study, such as that of literature studies or of text or discourse linguistics, or even the field of theology. So do these models adopted for translation from other fields, imported from other fields, do they really work for to meet the needs of the translator?" Cristiano Nord contends, obviously, that that's not the case, and that we need something more useful and apt for our purposes as translators. As he continues saying, "But what is right for the literary scholar, the text linguist, or the theologian is not necessarily right for the translator. Different purposes require different approaches. Translation-oriented text analysis should not only ensure full comprehension and correct interpretation of the text or explain its linguistic and textual structures and their relationship with the system and norms of the source language. What should a model like this do for us?" Well, this is how Dr. Nord answers the question. "It should also provide a reliable foundation for each and every decision which the translator has to make in a particular translation process. For this purpose, it must be integrated into an overall concept of translation that will serve as a permanent frame of reference for the translator." So what are, in summary, the main benefits of a tailor-made model for translators and translation for the analysis of the originals that we need to work with? The following items summarize this thesis by Cristiano Nord. A good model, or a model apt for translation, should meet our needs and the requirements of translation as an activity. So it should be adapted to translation needs. It should ensure full comprehension and correct interpretation of the text. To understand is to translate, or in order to translate, we need to understand. Without comprehension, we cannot really convey a meaning that we haven't apprehended in a new language. So it obviously stands to reason that comprehension and interpretation of a text should be paramount for the translator as a point of departure, but leaving the scopus aside, obviously. But in this case, a model of analysis for translators should ensure this comprehension, should help us to understand the drift of the meaning of the source text and the author. It should also explain the source text linguistic and textual structures, and the link between these source text linguistic and textual structures with the system and the norms of the source language. So the discursive and linguistic component, textual component, in addition to the meaning, should also be ensured in this model. A good model for us should also serve as a foundation for all our decision making in a particular transition process. It should serve as a frame of reference for every single, according to, in the words of Cristiano Nord, for every single decision to be taken by the translator when navigating the translation process from beginning to end. Should therefore be integrated in an overall concept, a view of translation, a paradigm, a theory of translation, and should be congruent with it. So after seeing the benefits and defending or providing a rationale, we need to look at we can look at certain additional insights provided by the author um, in elsewhere. The source text is still important. As you can see, Vermeer advocated for advocated the dethroning of the source text. Let's look at the target culture. Let's look at the target text. The accusations or criticisms of anarchic translation or free translation or a call for breaking up completely, parting ways with the original and the author, especially when it came to literary or authoritative texts or canonical texts, like Quixote, for instance. In response to this criticism, Christiane Nord presented her source text analysis model and the importance that and she defended that functionalism was indeed, and Scopus theory was indeed consistent with the importance of the source text in the translation process. So despite the priority given, and I quote, to the target text purpose in approaching a translation project, which is central to functionalism, the source text remains the starting point for a correct understanding of the original and ultimately for the successful production of a translation. We cannot escape equivalence. It seems we cannot escape in translation the existence of the original. So the source text, the original text is a point of departure for Christiane Nord. Therefore, we need a model to correctly read the translation, the original, in order to translate properly. Another interesting quote that I think provides additional insights into the need for this source text analysis goes into some of the additional benefits, and this is taken from again from 1997. Analysis of the source text guides the translation process in that it provides the basis for decisions about A, the feasibility of the translation assignment. Should I accept it? Is it possible to translate the text? Should I move on or reject it? B, which source text units are relevant to a functional translation? Which components of the source text will be conducive or are good raw material, so to speak, to provide a functionally adequate translation, a translation that meets the scopus. And C, which translation strategy will lead to a target text meeting the requirements of the translation brief. So all these components, is it feasible to translate the text? What components or aspects of the source text will be maintained in the target text so that we can provide the reader, the target reader, with a functionally acceptable translation or target text? And finally, which strategy will better lead the translator, or will better help me as a translator to produce that functionally adequate translation? Two principles to remember in this source text analysis model are the following. The two main principles to remember when approaching source text analysis, according to Christiane Nord, are that irrespective of the text linguistic-based model used to analyze the source text, it must include 1. A pragmatic analysis of the communicative situations involved, and 2. That the same model be used for both the source text and the translation brief, thus making the results comparable. So we need to look at the pragmatic components. When we talk about pragmatics, we are referring to speakers and addressees, their background of speakers and addressees, their attitudes and beliefs, their understanding of the context of an utterance, both written and oral, and their knowledge of how culture can be used for a variety of purposes. The pragmatics points to the context. Remember the previous slides in previous parts of the presentation when we had our source text, the Quixote, which was written in an environment, in a context, and according to certain beliefs and points of view and views of the world, and was aimed at a certain set of readers, Spanish speakers. When we translate the Quixote into English, we are creating a new Quixote based on the old Quixote, written in a new language for a new set of readers in a new pragmatic situation, in a new context. So therefore, pragmatics is important, as well as the actual way in which we are going to produce a text that is going to be functional, useful for the target readers. So when it comes to analyzing a text with Christiane Nord's model, It includes information about the subject matter of the source text. It includes information about the content. It includes information about presuppositions. We will refer to presuppositions later on. It's one of the key components of the model. It also refers to or includes information regarding text composition, elements of a non-verbal nature like pictures, etc., the vocabulary or lexis of the source text, the sentence structure of the source text, and what Christian and I refer to as supra-segmental features of the source text. We'll refer to this in a minute in a more simplified way. So this shows two columns. As you can see, there are two long-winded questions. These are the two questions that we are going to be using in Christian and Nord's model to interrogate the source text. The first one to the left, who is to transmit to whom, what for, by what medium, where, when, why, a text with what function. Remember, we are applying these questions to the source text. We haven't even started translating yet. We are gleaning information. We are reading the text, the source text, with a translator's eye, with applying a model, looking for information that we need that will be useful for us as a point of departure to start the translation later on. So all these questions, these two questions, refer to the source text. The translation comes later. This is the first step. So who is to transmit to whom, what, for, by what medium, where, when, why, a text with what function. Christian and Nord refers to this first column as the extra textual factors. As you can see, all of them refer to aspects surrounding the source text. Who, the author, is to transmit to whom, the readers of the source text. What for, the purpose, why was this text even written in the first place? By what medium? Was it a website? Was it an oral text? Is it a speech? Is it transcription? Is it etc.? The medium. Where, the geographical information. When, the time factor. When was the text produced? Why is related to the what for, in the sense that we may have certain agendas that were and that underlied the production and publication of the source text in the place and time when it appeared. A text with what function? This last component of the question, the function, refers to the three main linguistic functions: to inform, emphatic or referential; to persuade, the appellative function; and the expressive function, to generate humor, laughter, feelings of any sort, or merely the aesthetic artistic use of language. So this refers to what kind of linguistic or textual function do we appreciate or find in the source text. Once we have tackled this first set of questions or aspects, the extra textual factors, we are ready to delve into the intra-textual factors. Intra, within the text. We are actually reading the text with this set of questions to the right-hand column. On what subject matter is this? About cuisine? Is it about medicine? Is it about law? Is it about engineering? Is the author to say what or what not? That is, what is he saying? What is the content? So we have a text perhaps within the frame, the general subject matter of cooking, and what we have a recipe, and the recipe is about a certain dessert. You see, the what not will be the presuppositions. The source text and the source author writing for a source audience may share, both the author and the audience, the original in the source environment, may share common beliefs, common backgrounds, common knowledge. Therefore, the writer may have chosen not to make explicit certain information that does not need to be explained, because between friends, certain things don't need to be explained, you see. But this what not, it's important for us to find out. What is the author not saying overtly? What is the author assuming as background knowledge possessed by the reader of the source text. Obviously, why? Because we need to translate this text into a target language for a target set of authors or receivers. And these receivers may not be in the know of those presuppositions. And if you notice, this is one of the most important aspects of translation, to know what needs to be told, what needs to be changed, what needs to be adapted, so that then there is communication. The target text becomes an instrument of communication and not an obstacle. So these presuppositions, the what not is being said, are really important for the translator to detect when reading the source text and anticipating the translation and the needs of the readers of her translation. In which order? First we have ingredients, then we have a list of instructions and directions, etc. Which is what order of presentation of information can we see in the text as we read it? What non-verbal elements are being used? Meaning, are there elements like, for instance, which carry meaning? Like, for instance, pictures, photographs. How is the text arranged, colors, etc. Elements that are not strictly verbal, but which involve some kind of meaning as well. This refers also to the suprasegmental features. We can certainly use bold letters or italics to imply more meanings, or to call attention to the reader towards a certain meaning that has been used, or a certain way that words are being used. In which words? That's the terminology. What terms do we find in this translation? If we follow an example of the cookbook, we obviously are going to find utensils, kitchen supplies. We see ingredients. We're going to see verbs of action. So this is the part of the intertextual factors where we analyze the terminology and the lexical units used in the translation, in the source text rather. What kinds of sentences? Do we have long sentences, short subject, verb, object, or do we have long-winded sentences with chains of main clauses and subordinate clauses? How is the text organized from the point of view of its sentences? The tone. What overall tone and effect are really, we can simplify them together in this case. The tone. What kind of tone do we have in the text? Is it really formal? Is it a very light-hearted? What tone, overall style or voice do we see in the text, and how is this received by the reader, in this case ourselves? To what effect? So this is the simplified version of the source text analysis model by Christiane Nord. I think is useful to interrogate every translation, and this is exactly what we're going to be doing with our translation texts. We're going to be asking these two sets of questions and trying to come up with precise, accurate, and to-the-point answers to extratextual and intertextual factors. You can see in this case that the extratextual factors refer from the world surrounding the text, and the intertextual factors are providing us with information about the actual content of the text, its cohesion, its structure, its syntactical and lexical features, its stylistic features, the use of suprasegmental features like italics, quotation marks, and as such other features that tell us about the whole tone, intention, voice of the author when he or she wrote the source text. So again, in this case, you see just a different representation of the two sets of extra and intertextual factors and the different questions that they need to be answered in Christiane Nord's model. In the next part of the presentation, we will continue to look at different aspects of the model. We will move on towards the translation brief and the scopus, which are important factors as well in this Functionalism 101 presentation.